Hello, I am Mamadou Merchant. Welcome to the Viewpoint. It is said that the healthy democracy is founded on a plurality of organized social groups through which citizens learn the arts of associating together and practice the procedures of democratic governance and express group interests to policymakers. And the engine, if you like, of this civil activism is the media. As we head to the presidential election in December, it is surely apropos to discuss the role of civil society organizations and the media in the electoral process. And we'll attempt to answer such questions as what is responsible citizenship? What is responsible journalism? Particularly pertinent in these times when the political temperature is about to go markedly up if it hasn't done so already. I have in the studio two gentlemen, my interlocutors today. I've got the head of MAJAC, the Media Academy for Journalism and Communications, sitting on my right, Mr. Sangmendi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Njoj. It's a pleasure being on this platform.
Absolutely, and I've got also the founder and executive director of Gambia Participates, according to its website, a civil society organization that engages communities on constitutional reforms, participatory budgeting, and transitional justice. Mr. Marnyang.
Thank you very much, Mr. Njoj. It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome to the program. First, I'm going to go to the journalist. You're a journalist, not only that, and an administrator as well. So I wonder, so far, we've done the voter registrations and the like. How would you assess the coverage so far? Newspapers, the media generally.
The media is, I can say the electoral coverage, you can rate it 50 out of 100, because we are supposed to use our medium to strengthen participatory democracy by raising awareness, by watching what we are supposed to watch, by observing, by paying attention to electoral flaws, by paying attention to possible violence, and all whatnot. So if you look at this in our media, you could say that it's not been covered extensively, because if you look at some of the newspapers, hardly you see political stories that actually are geared towards the upcoming elections, raising awareness on issues. There are a lot of things that we should raise awareness on. There are a lot of things that a lot of methods, a lot of ways that we can involve the public in actually having their voice being heard. Because in the run-up to elections, there are so many communities and so many people out there that want some things addressed by politicians. And it's only the media that can bring those things to the fore. And unless you go to them and ask them of what their challenges are, these things were supposed to be done even before these political parties will come up with their party manifestos and party programs and strategies. So the media is really trying, but there's still room for improvement in that.
Absolutely, 50%. You've given the media 50% there. And Mario, your organization, you've been monitoring, you've been following things. Your assessment of that?
Well, I think for us, the civil society, we've done something, or we have put an end to something that has been illegally practiced for a couple of years now, and that has been decided by the court during the registration process. When we observe what was happening in Banjul, and then took the matter to the judiciary or to the court. And but aside from that as well, for us, the civil society organization, we've not only done the voter registration monitoring, but then ahead of the voter registration, we were also going to communities, informing them about, should I say, reminding them about the significance of elections, because the civil society have been doing this, especially in 2016 or prior to the 2016 elections. We've been going to communities. The sensitization is not enough. Some communities are already informed, but when elections are imminent, it's important to remind them of the significance of elections, and then also remind them of their power and their responsibility during voter registration process and also during elections, and then also how they can actually put an end to those politicians that come to their then be on top of their head, get their voters card at the end of the day. Nothing actually comes in. So it's not only on the presidential election, but also we remind them on the parliamentary election and also the local government election. So I think the civil society have been doing much in terms of this sensitization, but most importantly as well monitoring and also reporting. We've not only Gambia participate, but we've seen what peace ambassadors are doing, and that of Center for Research and Policy Development Center and the like. So I think, but then still not enough. More work has to be done.
Yes, sir. Well, why didn't you send observers to the voter registration centers?
That is a very good question. So we are supposed to have long-term election observers. So right now we are recruiting the long-term election observers. But for the registration period, you remember we were planning to deploy our long-term election observers somewhere around early this year, January, when we look at the IEC calendar. There was a change in terms of voter registration. So that change also affected the way we were also prepared. So that's the reason why we could not send, enough, or we could not send long-term observers to these registration centers, but we also were monitoring the process.
Absolutely. Mr. Mendy, earlier on, your rating of media performance so far, 50%. What are some of the shortcomings, the most salient shortcomings you see within the media?
So, as a media, there are 4 cardinal points that we should actually play, or four cardinal rules that we should actually play in electoral coverage. We should serve as educator, we should serve as moderator, we should serve as educator, moderator, we should serve as I forgot the 2. But for example, let's look at the educator bit. Educating the people about policies, educating people about the electoral laws, educating people about even how to who is eligible to be registered and to vote, and also issues around the politicians. We have a whole lot of them now. Educating people about the programs and policies of these political parties and candidates. And when it comes to the moderator bit, organizing debates, organizing town hall discussions. This we should not leave it in the hands of civil society or so, but even the media, for example, QTV can organize debates on policies and programs on certain issues. We cannot bring all of them together to talk about everything in their policies and programs, but it is important that they are able to talk about. You bring them together and say, today we are looking at education. As far as education is concerned, what do you want to change? Is it working? Is it not working? So you organize that platform where they could come, you moderate, and they can explain extensively. So you also have the monitor. The media is actually supposed to monitor elections just like the civil society will monitor elections. In the Gambia, I know there is a civil society coalition, civil society coalition on electoral monitoring. So the GPU is a member in there, and I know there are some member journalists. There are some journalists that actually participate in this monitoring bit. So they can actually also serve as monitor the electoral, the registration process, even the pre-registration, where people was IEC really prepared for the registration. Did they train their people, their staff very well to perform this responsibility? So
yes, but when we stick to the media there, yes, everything you've said is laudable, high-minded, but in reality, the media is not univocal. You've got many voices,
yeah,
isn't it? So when we sort of want to put them on a common platform, isn't there where the problem is? Because plurality, well, we have to accept divergent views.
Yep. And these divergent views now gives us gives us challenges. Of course, when there is plurality, there will be challenges. And when you're also rating, you don't just rate a particular media. There are a lot of challenges, that are also barring the media from actually doing a lot that they want to do. I am aware that the media want to do more, and you talk to some of them, they tell you financially we are not equipped. When it comes to material wise, we are also not equipped to do certain things that we wanted to do. We want to do, and you cannot actually do what you do not actually have funds or budget for. For example, if you want to organize, you want to monitor, you have to send your reporters in every region, for example. You have to send your reporters in every district. Is this something possible for a small media house that has only 8 staff or so? It would be a little difficult. So in as much as they want to do more, they still have challenges, and because of the challenges, I rated it 50.
Okay, absolutely, but we have to realize that we are going to get different voices expressing different opinions. With that, I think that is kind of inherent, the idea of plurality, if you like, within the civil society organizations. You may even have single issue organizations and that sort of thing. How does it work? Let's consider the different kinds of civil society organizations. For instance, you may have the informal sort, and you may have the sort that you've got, Gambia Participates. It's legally registered, isn't it? And it's advocacy based, as it were. It's more formal. And what's the market like in this country?
That's a very good question. Sometimes we hear politicians saying they are, they are oppositions that frame themselves to be activists or, advocates within the civil society fraternity that actually also tarnish the image of the civil society. We've seen, everyone has a right to be in any political party, support any political party or a candidate. But as a civil society, you have to be apolitical. So long as you are apolitical and you are doing what you are mandated to do as per the constitution of that particular organized entity, then you will become impartial in the work that you are doing. But if you become political, then there comes a problem, because they are not only going to say a particular organization, they're going to term it as the civil society are biased, the civil society are political, and the like. So that affects the CSO fraternity. And yes, there are...
But here, let me just cut you short. Do you mean to tell me that civil society shouldn't be political? It's not a political organization? Are you making a distinction here between the political organization and civil society proper?
Yes, I am trying to make that difference, that as a civil society, if you call yourself a civil society organization, then you are not supposed to be political in the sense that you are advocating for a selected group of people. A civil society doesn't work like that. And if you are advocating for a selected group of people, let's say, for example, a political party, then you are a political party, not a civil society organization. So a civil society represents the interest of the people, and you use those interests of the people, you mainstream it through policy advocacy, and then also influence government actions in order to change the situation of the society that you are representing. The politicians...
Absolutely. So here, you are interested in the... you're here to advocate for the interests of the people. Which people? Society is rarely homogeneous. You know what I mean? There are different factions, different groupings. Which ones?
That's a very good question. So every civil society organization have a mandate. You have those that are focusing on advocating for gender equality, others into education, others into human rights, others into good governance, anti-corruption, others into community development. So if you generalize it, then you might lose track in the work that you're doing. If you call yourself civil society, it's important that you're representing the interests of the people, but you have to be specialized in one area, and then other organizations will be. So sometimes the reason why some civil society organizations fail is because they wanted to do everything. They wanted to tap funds to do everything when their expertise is actually limited to a certain area. So For us, we focus on good governance. You wouldn't hear Gambia participate talking about other issues that is not of our that is not an area where we don't have the expertise. We leave it to, so when we have a partner that reach out to us or certain groups, we refer them to that particular organization that has the expertise. So yes, a civil society should not be advocating for a political entity. I mean, if you do that, then you become an opposition to the current government. Because you are, if you are also...
But why does it automatically follow? There could be circumstances where I go along with the government and others in which I say no. So it may not necessarily be automatic that I will be an opposition sympathizer.
If you are, how to call it, a political sympathizer, and you work with a civil society organization, that affects the image of that particular organization. It becomes political in a sense that you are not neutral. And as much as you are neutral, sometimes you agree with the government, sometimes you disagree with the government, and the same thing with the oppositions. So long as you are neutral, you are impartial, then you are serving the purpose of civil society. But sometimes, this is where civil society organizations around the world also have been making change of power in certain democracies or in certain autocratic states. In a sense, when the civil society organizations have seen a problem and the oppositions are actually not fixing that, we will see the likes of the Arab Spring, when activists, civil society go out and then advocate for change. So here, they are not advocating for Mr. Mboj or Sang to become president, but they are advocating for a system change for there to become a more democratic government. So in such instances, civil society come into play. But in other areas where you just jump in and advocate for a certain individual to become elected, then it defeats the purpose of being an advocate for the people.
Do you see many civil society organizations being political in that sense if you used it?
I wouldn't know. I have not done a research.
So you haven't seen anything, maybe in the papers, but you've been reading and stuff
exactly.
like that.
I've had politicians calling, civil society. Even myself individually, I've been termed as someone else who have political ambition for a political position, which I really don't think is true. So. Because I don't support any party anyways.
But you will go to vote?
Oh yeah, definitely. I will vote, and I will vote based on competence and based on what based on my focus regarding what that particular individual or party should deliver. So I'm waiting to see a manifesto, and not only the manifesto in writing, but also in terms of delivery. And that's the reason why I'm also, pushing for not only the media, but the organized group to ensure that we have a legislation that will force politicians to face off in words ahead of elections. So there you should be able to make sound judgment regarding who to vote for, because that is a very important platform in order for politicians to sell their ideas, not in the streets to promise people bag of rice or oil and so on.
We will come back to that. So that's an interesting point there. But here you use the term there, neutrality. Haloed concept in what we do in journalism. But here again, I think it's a very, very tricky ground here. Yes, openly you've said, for instance, Mar, you've said that you're not supporting any political party, you've not decided yet, and yet you will go and vote. There is that preferential embedding, as it were. Some people say that. Because of that embedding, it affects the judgments you make. When I look at some of these papers, I can tell you they are political sympathies when you do your analysis. So how do you counter that? You want this neutrality, this ideal, it's an ideal, and yet the reality out there, the institutional weaknesses, if you like, of the structures here, and then most of these media outlets, they don't have that much money. Then you rely on maybe people come and give you gifts. So the potential, really, to have things sort of subvert what you're supposed to do, your noble duty, as it were.
We have 4 duties as journalists. Seek the truth and report it. Minimize harm, act independently, And the fourth one actually is that you have to be accountable for your actions.
You know very well that easier said than done.
Yeah. So these are the four cardinal rules that we always call ourselves. We always challenge ourselves to. And Society for Professional Journalists also have these four cardinal rules as rules that we should definitely uphold and hold very high. We seek the truth and report it. And seeking the truth and reporting it, if you task yourself to do this, then that means you should report unbiasedly. You should not favor anyone. You should not actually let no amount of inducement.
How practical is that in given our current conditions, the reality of the media right now, perhaps some of them poorly trained? You see, you have issues of resources. You don't have much money to do certain things, and the training maybe not that very good. So there are many factors that militate against really how we perform, an excellent performance of what we are there to do.
I believe every media house also should have core values. And if you have core values, you should have principles. And you should be able to uphold your values, your principles. Because in as much as we have those challenges out there, we know we are not financially equipped to do certain things. But your integrity is the most important. As a journalist, if you lose integrity, you've lost everything. As a media house, if you lose integrity, you've lost everything. And that's why if at some point you feel that Mara set up a political party and his ideologies are so tempting that our media house want to actually endorse him, we can endorse him, but publicly we should make the public know that we are endorsing Mar and we are going to be pro-Mar medium. So anything we do in our medium is going to be pro-Mar. We will never say anything against Mar. We've seen it in the West, that pro-left or pro-right media, and you read it, you know it. But here, people do not actually tell the public that they're going to be pro this party or pro that party. And it is important that they publicly make those things so that when even if you report and it's biased towards someone, everybody will know that this is actually, well, they've already made their decision that they're going to be a pro this party, media. So that is it in there. So it's all about values, and all of us individually, we all have our values. At homes, we have values we want to bring our kids with. We want to see our families go through those values. We want to see them upholding those values anywhere they go. And we also have principles. So it's about if you cannot withstand what is happening in the field, you quit. If you don't quit, then you are going to, just like Mar said, you are going to brand everyone the same. And at the end of the day, we also know that very well, that some political parties are actually branding a certain medium, a pro, this party media, and government is also seeing certain media houses, those in government are also seeing certain media houses are pro, opposition medium. So it all comes down to that. I think those media that are already branded that way, they should just publicly declare if that is definitely true. But sometimes also politicians use this just to score political points, but it's not actually true that this particular medium is a pro opposition party or pro government party. But yes, because they want to also in as much as people we tarnish each other's image, if a media house is standing up to expose your wrongdoings, you don't say good things about that media house. You will find a way of actually, also tarnishing their image. So the best we could say is to say they are a pro, opposition platform.
So the target will also start thinking that possibly you are an agent of the opposition and all of that.
And that makes the work of a journalist or the work of civil society dangerous.
But this is very interesting there. Let me just push you a bit, because you've brought in the examples of what happens in the West, we all know, be it Fox News, CNN, and all of that. You see their political leanings.
Yeah.
But that reality, what does that tell you when put against the idealisms of neutrality, objectivity, impartiality? How do you explain that obvious political leanings in a culture where they want to encourage objectivity, neutrality, and all the rest of it? The two don't seem to sit easily together in my head.
You know, as a journalist, even when you sit and you are planning a story idea, of course, even in the time of selecting who is your source, that way, issues of neutrality, issues of objectivity, you know, becomes something else. Because how did you come to conclusion that Mar is a better source than Boj? You know, that in itself. So our job now is so challenging and demanding that upholding these principles, sometimes, no matter what you do, someone out there will sit and question what it is that you are doing. But then again, we just have to, you know, stand our ground and believe that, you know, we are doing the right thing, and we think the public, the right meaning public, will definitely know that, you know, they are unbiased. Really, they are just doing their job as expected.
Absolutely, but inherent in what we do is the notion of plurality, especially where you have lots of people. That divergence of views,
Yeah.
that must be in there. So Mar, as a civil society organization, I wonder, what has been your experience dealing with the media? Do you have your favorite outlet, and why?
I think the media is a friend to the civil society.
Absolutely.
Because the work we do, I mean, the media wants content, civil society gets content. And sometimes we collaborate. And then also, for us at Gambia Party, we've been collaborating with journalists. We do give, to call it, certain, we outsource certain work to journalists for them to actually do some, you know, information digging that is really under the carpet. So, yeah, I mean, I think I will speak personally. I have not been, how to call it, discriminated by any media platform, although sometimes one big challenge is I'm misquoted in terms of publications. So, and I take that very seriously. I will communicate to that particular journalist and then mark some of the things that you know, have been reported. Or sometimes you call me asking for information, I give you information, but you didn't tell me that you were recording me or you were preparing a story. That gets me really mad. And but then, like I said, we are friends to the media. I've not been discriminated. So I wouldn't say I have a, you know, priority. Although one media organization that have been inviting us, and personally myself, you know, we have not been seen forthcoming, and I really understand that because of the censorship that is attached to that particular media organization, and it is not a public media organization, so that I understand.
Oh, absolutely. Let me ask you this. For instance, with Gambia Participates, what's your membership like?
We are not a membership organization.
Exactly,
yes, we are not. Sometimes people come and say, I want to be part of Gambia Participates. I said, it doesn't work like that. We actually have a secretariat and we have an advisory board. So even when we are staffing, you will always see on our website or on GamJobs or on a Facebook page, we advertise positions. And even our recruitment is in a sense that because we are a very sensitive organization, so no one just step in our organization like that. So when we do our recruiting, what we do, we have the advisory board that will sit and some experts, both local and outside, that will be part of the panel to recruit, to interview someone else and then look at their background information before you become part of us.
Yes, I do hear a lot of analysts sort of complain about the fact that we don't volunteer. The notion of volunteerism is not quite rooted. It's not quite ingrained. So I wonder, do we have sort of civil society organizations with a mass membership? Do such things exist?
Yeah, they are what we call community-based organization that are membership organization, and then you have other organizations that are also membership, but comes with a challenge. I have a colleague that was establishing a membership organization. I mean, quite few. So they asked me to be part of it. Unfortunately, I said I can't advise, but I can be part of the membership based on experience. But later on, in a year or two, the organization died, and I told the person the reason why. You know, we form membership organizations because members have a unique interest and values that they wanted to pursue. But that is the objective of having a membership organization. But in reality, it's not the case. You go to a meeting, you don't have consensus. It's always pointing finger to A, B, C, D, E, and you don't have a closer at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, what happens is the organization doesn't move forward, and it affects the progressiveness of that particular organization. So yes, there are membership organizations, but we are not one.
Yeah, you are not one of them. And it's quite interesting that your last point, that when you go to these membership organizations, it's extremely difficult to take decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're always fragmenting. We'll possibly get back to that and talk a bit more about that one. So now, I imagine that at your school at Majak, you're preparing students, you know, those who are going to cover elections, what to look out for, how to report. That will be very, very difficult. The whole ethics, if you like, the ethics and practice of electoral reporting.
Well, the Gambia Press Union has a code of conduct, and they have a whole chapter on electoral coverage, electoral reporting. And I think everyone who wants to cover elections as a journalist, you should get the code of conduct and try to read it as much as you can. Try to understand what is in the code of conduct. For us at Majak, what we are doing now is, at this moment, for example, we already have a 9-month project with a Danish-based civil society organization, and the project is actually geared towards training journalists, community media, and civil society organization members on how to report on elections. The training has already started. We sent out call for applications, and the people that applied, we're actually training them on a whole lot of issues around covering elections, and understanding the processes, the procedures, the laws, and everything, and even proactive way of covering elections rather than just following politicians and here and there. You go out to the communities and, you know, get their desires, their wants, and take it to the media, so the politicians will know this. What we are also doing is to train them on misinformation literacy, fact-checking, and all whatnot, because in the run-up to elections, there will be a lot of, you know, misinformation shared out there. There will be a lot of fake news shared out there, and you don't want those kind of things to be shared or to be used by journalists, because they could influence a lot of decisions. People could see an image and think that this was actually a particular political party rally, when actually it was doctored. It was just the leader of the political party in a podium, but they actually doctored the other images, and, you know, it can influence me to say, I never knew that he has this amount of funds, so let me go and I loved him, but I never thought he would win. But with this crowd,
these are ethical issues.
Yeah, these are ethical issues. Journalists need to be grounded on issues of misinformation literacy to understand even, you know, for example, if an image is doctored, how can you actually fact check? If, you know, if someone has said, someone has made a claim, how can you fact check the claim? Because in the run-up to election, there will be false claims.
To get a second source, as it were.
There will be false claims. And these false claims, actually, some people have already been trained on fact-checking. And, for example, Malagan is actually fact-checking a lot of claims made by politicians, and they're actually sending them out there in the public. So what we are also doing is to sign a memorandum of understanding with Premium Time Center for Investigative Journalism in Nigeria, and what we want to do is to have a big project where we will do electoral coverage. We will train the media on all these things more extensively. And also look forward to even doing a lot more things. At this moment, we are planning, and I hope we will be able to get funding for this to do these things. But MAJAC as an institution, we are not training people to go out there to cover elections. Maybe if they are working for QTV, for example, and QTV wants to employ to send them to cover elections, well, that is actually possible. But our students, we don't encourage them to go out there to cover elections because some of them are not with any medium, and if a media house wants to just hire you just to cover elections, you have to be very cautious, because you are not fully prepared for that.
They should be keen observers of what's going on.
And media houses should also conduct their own capacity building training on how they want their elections to be covered.
Precisely.
Because we might be able to train generally, but your code of conduct, your operational procedures and policies here should be understood by every journalist, and every media house is supposed to definitely have those things.
Yes, but let's ask you this before I go to Mar. Does fair media access automatically translate into equal media access? What would be fair? We've got, 18 political parties? Because we know that these questions will come up. Yeah. What would be fair? Does fair mean sameness, all of them? Yeah,
giving them a voice in your platform. It's going to be really difficult.
But you've talked about the practical difficulties. They wouldn't be able to do so.
It's going to be really difficult.
There will be prioritization,
Of course, it will be difficult. If we have 18 political parties and 3 independent candidates already, that's 21. No media house in the Gambia can send 21 reporters on the ground to follow these political parties. And this particular reporter, even if you send, for example, QTV, you are a television station, you need not just one reporter, you need a reporter, you need a cameraman, you need someone, a director probably to direct the meetings if they are going to be streamlined.
It will be a logistical nightmare.
In terms of financial resources, how much are you going to invest? How much are you going to spend on all those things? So, of course, there will be prioritization. How are you going to prioritize now? That one I leave in your hands, because you have to definitely prioritize whether you're going to follow the big political parties or you're going to follow and which one is big. They will all consider themselves big. As far as they are holding rallies and they are pulling thousands and thousands of people, they will consider themselves big. So I leave that one in your hands, but it's going to really, I know it is challenging, and the media cannot cover everyone. That one is obvious.
Absolutely. We just wanted to make that clear.
The media
because
cannot cover everyone.
That sooner or later, certain media houses will be called and say, you've been unfair, you've been this, or you've been that. But, practical reality really dictates what we do. Mar, earlier on you mentioned something that with the mass, if you like, civil society organizations, they seem more disorganized than organized, which is quite interesting. So here, this is interesting because we know that when you join these organizations, yes, it's a good training ground for citizenship, isn't it? Yeah. So it appears as if there is chaos at the very top, reflecting the chaos at the very bottom, because this should be the nursery, as I said in my introduction, where we learn the processes, the procedures of democratic governance. So if we're getting it wrong there, we will get it wrong up there. This is the connection. This is quite fascinating there. What's your reflection on this?
Definitely, and I really agree with you on that. Civil society organizations, CBOs, community-based organizations, and volunteering, even at school, if you volunteer in extracurricular activities, it's a training ground to prepare you to become a responsible citizen. And when you have that training at a very tender age, you become more proactive in responding to national issues. But if you do not volunteer, I actually started my volunteerism from a very early age at Gambia High School, not Brufut Upper Basic School, to Gambia High, to becoming the vice president of the National Union of Gambian Student Union, NOX. So there I started building this interest, and I've seen the difficulties, the challenges with these organizations. Sometimes, you know, there's a war over words during these meetings, but now after learning the process, getting to understand, you prepare yourself to become better and then prevent yourself from, so you put up a deterrence mechanism from ensuring that what occurred before occur again in the future. So yes, I totally agree with you that I think citizens should start building the interest of volunteering, joining organizations, or forming one that perhaps the issue that they're advocating is not being advocated by others.
Absolutely. And I wonder, you as a journalist, when you look at civil society organizations from a journalistic point of view, how do you characterize them? Is there one way of characterizing them, or maybe you have many ways of characterizing them? How do you see them?
They are there to serve the interests of the public, and they advocate for different things. Some of them, you have a couple of them that advocate for human rights issues. You have a couple of them that look at governance, good governance issues, and you have some of them that are on health, education, and some and all whatnot. And we need them in our country because where political parties, where politicians are not able to effect any change, civil society organizations should be able to play a part to make sure that those changes are there. Politics, they say, is an everyday thing, but mostly in some part of in this part of the world we are, there wasn't these political activities going on in 2017. There wasn't anything going on in 2018, but come 2021, there's a lot of political activities going on. So civil society organizations are always on the ground to make sure that they look at things that are not actually working, bringing it out for the public, and they could entice the public into, you know, also raising their voice on things that are not working in communities, so as to help spur development. Because without civil society, a country without civil society, it's like a country without media.
But this is the point. It's even deeper than that. Without that, civil society is the bedrock, really, of democratic societies. Yeah. So this is really the key. That was why that point about when it comes to that mass civil society organizations, we cannot get it on. But that is reflective of, it reflects what is going on. So it is absolutely significant in building, you know, a polity in building our society. But let me ask you this, because recently, you know, at least in the papers, we've heard a lot of people bemoan, they were lamenting the fact that there's a lot of inflammatory language, abusive, and that sort of thing. As a journalist, as part of my social responsibility, should I report these? True, it has happened, but there's a social responsibility, I think, that I have, given the wider political context. Should I report this?
So, you know, the Society for Professional Journalists actually said their second point is to minimize harm. And that issue of minimizing harm is for you to act responsibly to make sure that you do not report anything that is likely going to steer violent conflict. Conflict we conflict with ourselves. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and you're asking yourself, should I actually go to work? That in itself is conflict, but we're talking about violent conflict. We should at all time try to minimize harm. Now, where it goes bad is where you are doing live streaming, where you are covering programs live on radio, on television. You do not have a delaying machine. If someone insults, it will go out there in the public. If you are doing live streaming, and now that, you know, we have a lot of citizen journalists, you have even political parties, an event is happening, these political party members, they themselves will come and be live streaming events. Issues of insults, for example, inflammatory language, for example, how can you actually censor that from going out when you are live streaming? It is practically impossible. And it is actually generational tools that have taken us to those things. And generational tools like mobile phones, smartphones, you know, the internet and all whatnot. Before, you have to go and cover the event, come back and edit and take out all the things that you feel are inflammatory, are not supposed to have gone to the public out there. You remove them and then keep what is actually, you know, accepted to be heard in our society. But nowadays, that is really difficult. With live streaming, it's really difficult. And
no, absolutely, one understands that if it is live streaming, there's nothing that you can do about it. Perhaps your reaction to it will give some kind of balance,
yeah.
whoever is covering that story. But still, as an editor, where it is not about live streaming, my reporter has gone out
Yeah.
and covered a rally, came back. There are these inflammatory, abusive and stuff
In this
like that. As my editorial line, as an editor, should I leave it out because of my social responsibilities?
Of course, you as an editor, you are the gatekeeper. That is why you are the last person to say that this is good to pass as far as our medium is concerned. So those kind of things.
So that is not censorship.
Well, I don't call it censorship, because if I use an abusive word against Mar and you broadcast it, you're not trying to create peace between me and Mar, because the next minute Mar will respond and then it creates some sort of violence, and we do not want that. So that is not censorship. Where what is reported is likely going to create violent conflict, clash, or a trade of insults here and there, you should definitely not publish that. Where I made a valid point, a valid political point, and you cut that off because you want to favor Mar, then I can call that censorship. But the use of inflammatory language, the use of insults, when we talk about insult, we are not talking about he's a stupid person. Someone who is stupid is actually stupid. Someone who's made a stupid statement, you can actually say that statement is a stupid statement. But going to insult someone's mother or parents, or even calling them certain names, I think we should, politicians, people climbing the podium, they themselves, I think that is where it should start. If I am a political leader, I do not want a song about any other political party that is actually defaming or demeaning that particular person. I do not want any of my candidate, any speaker on my platform to speak there and speak ill of another person. So if it starts there, the media will not even pick them. But if, for example, someone goes for coverage and comes back with inflammatory language, definitely do not let that pass.
Absolutely. I'll come back to you on one or two points there. Mar, that's it. I've read one analyst somewhere saying that to have a stable democracy, maybe it goes with having a sort of post-industrialized society. There is that link. So where you have this mass number of people in poverty, in privation, it's difficult to construct a solid civil society organization. I've heard that. So when we put it in that context, then one wonders, what is it that we must do now, as it were, to begin that? What is it that we must do? Because it seems you are in many ways in an impossible situation. Because in many ways you need economically a certain level, a certain threshold for civil society to be really active and vibrant and the like.
Definitely. I think citizens have to be economically enfranchised first, for them to be able to get into these kind of activities. Yesterday we just coming from rural Gambia after 5 days. So when we communicate, the first thing that they tell us is we're going to farm. We're in the rainy season, they have to make sure they cultivate enough for the upcoming year. So having been economically they are stable, they have what it means, they will, they wouldn't be having that trouble, you understand? So I think the government first have to make sure that economically the rural communities are also industrialized, like you said. Give them the jobs that create. I mean, when you industrialize these rural settings, you're also creating jobs. and then you also improving productivity of goods and services in that particular region, but most importantly that of the country. So
and you might even keep the kids there instead of the urbanization.
Exactly, right? I mean, look at how dense Kanifing is, also like say urban Gambia is. So I think that should be one of the, any government that comes with that particular idea and or a party that sells that particular idea, and you are able to defend it and tell us where you're going to get the fund and then make sure you implement effectively, then definitely I think you will be one of those that will be favored. But now, citizens have their concern. When we go to communities and then talk to, community members, give them the information, they're interested, right? But there is a conflicting interest here. You have one that is about national matter. You have two that is a household matter. So you prioritize one. You're definitely going to prioritize the household matter to put food on the table and then do extra. So I believe that should be one of the, that's why in the West, if you go to the US and then if you go to the city hall, and there comes a particular subject matter that should be discussed, people voluntarily come. And they come not only to listen, but they have a speech that they already written, and they thought of it, they made their research. They make those research because there's food on the table, right? Even though it is scarce, but at least if I go back, there's food on the table. So they prepare themselves to give their concern, but most importantly, hold their elected officers accountable. And these city council officers are going to be seated there facing these citizens, telling them what they don't even want to hear, but citizens have to tell them. So I think, yes, economically, people have to be enfranchised in a sense that equal opportunities will be given irrespective of where you live. There should be industrialization in rural settings. I mean, when I was coming yesterday, one of our driver told us, Mar, what you said, now I'm getting it. We should not have scarcity of food because everywhere is grain. How do we ensure that there is no scarcity of food? But just like the Asians will do. If you go to Thailand or Taiwan, what they do is you have a particular hotel, right? And there are certain farmers that could not farm, let's say, for example, hectares because they don't have the machines. So they buy those hectares, employ those farmers, the farmers work, and they will be paid for the work that they are doing. At the end of the day, they will have a share of what they harvest. But what they have, the goods that the goods that they have harvested, the hotel process those goods. They make it in the form of a towel and oil, and then they also have organic food. So some hotel will have policy where you see 90% of their food is organic. So it's coming from that farm. So anywhere that is coming from the hotel, you buy those foods.
Absolutely, but you know what is interesting about these things, and I keep on telling people when they give me examples from Singapore or Rwanda and all that, it appears as if some of these initiatives, they tend to be so culture specific. There are certain social norms which would make it easier for one to do that. So it seems that if they don't travel well, the great Edward Said called it the traveling theory. Somehow ideas do not travel well. Somehow they lose their elasticity. They lose their dynamism. It seems that here we may need to actually think originally.
Create
you know what I mean?
Ideas.
Given the way we are. I mean, we are coming towards the end. But finally, we were just debating this the other day in the office. The press, anywhere you go in newspapers, yes, we have to make a distinction between facts and commentary. We didn't put it quite in these terms, but I think it was implied earlier on. But you do have in newspapers and media outlets people who satirize. Can I use satire? Can I use lampoon? I know that here people really cannot take these things. Yeah. But I'm always trying to, if you like, to defend the plurality of media houses to do what they need to do, as long as there is no libel, there is no defamation. For me, there's no libel, there's no slander. Yeah. So what do you think about that freedom, even to lampoon a politician, even though we know that here a lot of people wouldn't like that, they will call it mocking, they will call it unethical, they will give it all sorts of names.
Yeah, so I gave a speech a couple of weeks ago and I said, in as much as we are watching people, we are holding people accountable, there is a constituent out there, a bigger constituent out there that is also watching us and actually, judging us. Sometimes they judge us wrongly because they don't even know how our work operates. For example, if I put up a headline and you look at my headline and critique my headline because you do not know what are the rules of writing a headline, right? So yes, in the Gambia, they will say our culture does not allow this, our tradition does not allow this. But we also must understand that the world is becoming a global world. There are certain things that were not happening in the Gambia. A lot of our parents hardly ate jumbo. They don't know what jumbo is, Maggi is, all this additive in our food. But now
I'm of that generation.
but now all these things are coming into our food. For example, satire is you can do satire. You can actually lampoon a politician. I don't see anything really. We just have to accept that these things are supposed to, like you said, so long as someone is not defaming someone is not using slander and libel against someone just because they want to gain political, they want someone else to score political points. I think the media will be liberal to do what it is that they want to do.
Absolutely. We've come towards the end. So now, finally, maybe 30 seconds. What are your biggest fears heading towards December?
Well, I think that my biggest fear has to do with post-election violence. If the resources are out there, let the politicians, if it is credible, let the politicians accept it. And if they do not accept, let them use the law. But also, citizens as well have to be very responsive and responsible to make sure that they don't get into any
no mob
exactly.
violence.
I mean, just go and then look for the one that satisfies you and then vote. And then wait for the election results. We have an election app called Marble. Use the seat and then get those results out.
Absolutely. We've come to the end. Thank you very much, Mr. Sangmendi and Mr. Maranjang. That was a fantastic conversation. I certainly enjoyed myself. And so that's it. Responsible journalism, responsible citizenship. We all know what it is. Let's just have the courage, the will, the spirit to do it. Until next time, I'm Mohammed Mbouch. Goodbye.